Hey, what's going on, YouTube? It is Ty and Justin with the Behind the Duel Disc podcast, bringing you another episode, and also with another special guest. Today we have Behind the Duel Disc a Justin. I would probably say he's probably the voice of Tengu format. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, so here today with us we have Tyler from TCG Rewind. He does a lot of Tengu format stuff, primarily Tengu, with a little bit of other formats mixed in there. Tyler, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, man?
Yeah, thank you. You guys kind of covered most of it. Yeah, TCG Rewind. I do some Tengu Player content. We throw in a little bit of other things here and there. I mean, it's pretty much just Tengu. I did like one video on Miami format, but that's a pipe dream in the future. You know what I'm saying?
Gotcha.
Yeah, let's get Tengu off the ground running first, and then we'll come back and visit that.
Sure, sure.
I have one question before we get into the Tengu stuff. So
Mhm.
so Tyler, I've got to ask with every with you how did you get into Yu-Gi-Oh? How did the Yu-Gi-Oh bug get you?
Oh well, it actually, if you want like the full story, it started when I was on the bus, like riding the bus as a kid. A kid gave me, my first bit of crack being a Yu-Gi-Oh card, and I was like, oh, I got to get a pack of this, and as soon as I did, I was like hooked. So like, I had like most people actually start with like Yugi Kaiba structure deck. Nah, I think my
Mm-hmm.
first card was like Wicked Worm Beast, and I was like, I need to play this game. So yeah,
God,
that was kind of the main thing for it. I mean, I also watched like I was a Saturday morning cartoons kid too, so I watched a
same.
lot of Yu-Gi-Oh as a kid, and so that really got me into it as well.
Right, that's the same for me. I saw the cartoon, and then I I'm from a I live in a very very small town, and
Mhm.
this at the time the only place that had like the Yugi Kaiba starter decks in our whole town, not even our Walmart had them at the time, was this old video store that had
Dude, I
them.
got mine from a gas station. Like,
Oh.
dude, I was so tilted. So I got mine from a gas station, and I got starter deck Kaiba. And then I was like, you know what goes great with one Blue Eyes is if I pick up this legendary like Legend of Blue Eyes pack and get my second one because I thought it was guaranteed. I'm like $3 for
Ooh,
another Blue Eyes. Open it up
that's
and I get the
free.
dolphin. I get the dolphin with the guns on the back, Mishizur or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, I'm so ripped off right now.
Oh, dude, just a quick little story. Like, you think that you think you felt ripped off then? So when I first found out what sleeves were, like when I
Oh,
went to my first local and found out what sleeves were, I like my keep in mind I was like fourth or fifth grade at this time. So just now I'm seeing like everybody at my first local, which was a candle shop of all things.
did you sing?
It's a candle shop.
That's crazy.
Like they sold candle, but I never saw them sell one candle. They did more Yu-Gi-Oh business than anything. But I seen everybody with sleeves, and then I went to Walmart with my dad to get sleeves, and I thought the cards came in the sleeves. I was like, I'm about to get like a bunch of cards for like nothing because I think it was like $5. I was like, I'm about to get like a whole mess of cards. Then I opened it up. There wasn't nothing in there wasn't nothing in the sleeves. I was like, I've been ripped off.
Yeah, I think I fell victim to the good old fashioned. Like, I went to a swap week meet with my dad, and some guy was selling like fake Yu-Gi-Oh cards, but it was like
Oh
Jinzo and like
gosh.
D-Mock, all these, and I was like, oh, these are cool, and I had to have them. And then I was like, wait a second, none of these are foil, and they're all like made out of paper.
Yeah, I ran into a similar situation like that during my middle school days. We'll get into the Tengu stuff. I promise.
You're okay, you're okay, man. I
But
don't
Dude,
like
that,
I got this kid. I remember this kid back in middle school. I was like so obsessed with the Egyptian gods when they showed up on in Battle City on the show. I was like, I've got to
know.
get my hands on these.
Yeah.
And when this one kid had a fake obelisk on the bus, and I didn't know
Uh-oh.
any better. I thought it was real, and what's it called? He's like, give me $5 and you can have it. And I was like, yes, I got an obelisk. then like I got the Yu-Gi-Oh! World Championship game that came with all three of them, and I was like, wait a minute, this doesn't look like this.
Yeah, that's fair.
Dude, no cap though. Those fake card, like those tins, that was the best artwork, dude.
True. They had some cool look. Oh, I mean, they kind of remade them. Like they made actual printings of the Egyptian gods, like with their OG like fake printing for whatever reason.
Dude, like OCG, the OCG though, like I feel like we got like when it came to like our starter decks and like our starter decks like Yugi Kaiba and Joey and all that, we comparing ours to like the OCGs, we got ripped off so bad.
Hey, OCG still has the pumpkin mystic tomato, and I'm still upset about that. The fact that they haven't made it a lost art, you know.
They had Crush card in a starter deck.
True.
Every time I think about that, like I'll see them pop up on eBay every now and then. I'll just be so sick.
Yeah, no, I feel that.
All right, so I guess we'll get into it, man. So what got you into Tengu format per se? Or like, did you start off competitive back in the day, and like Tengu was around that time? Like, what got you into Tengu?
I mean, I played the game from like the very beginning. I mean, I was a little kid, so like for a lot of the early years, I was really bad, right? Like, I mean, for the most part, my first regional was in Teledad format, and I showed up with like a Fiend deck because at the time I was playing in like a kids bracket, like my locals. I mean, I don't know if you guys remember, like back in the day, Yu-Gi-Oh was like pretty big, so like a local card shop would have like a lot of people playing, and like so I was in like the little kids bracket where like you could play against other kids exclusively. So for the most part, like my deck was like crushing it in the little kids bracket, but then like when I went to a regionals, I got a wake up call like, oh, there's a meta and cards are good, and you know what I'm saying, like, and then I saw like what Dark Arm Dragon did, and I was like, this is kind of insane. So I kind of started there. I think it was like after my first regional where I kind of realized like that Yu-Gi-Oh was more complex than what I had experienced, and I kind of started the game playing Gladiator Beast. That was like the first like semi-competitive deck I played, and I don't think I really did anything too special until around Tengu Plant format. So like I played through every format historically from like basically after Teledad, but when I got to like Tengu, that was where I like sat down with like the good players at my locals, and I kind of learned how to play pretty well. And like I basically had like a lesson with them, and immediately after that lesson, they like I went and like I just bubbled on YCS Kansas City. I literally lost on the last round to make it in the top 32. So I learned a lot in a really short amount of time, which was like pretty crazy. So I have fond memories of Tengu Plant format, but my actual like first top was in like wind-up loop format. I played wind-ups, and then I kind of just proceeded. I played all the way until like 2018, and it was Goki format Nats, which was just absolutely miserable. I don't even know if you guys experienced that. It's terrible gameplay.
I did.
And that's where I was like, I'm kind of done with this game. So I kind of stopped. But I would say like when everyone was like bandwagoning Goat, right? Like I saw a lot of, like there was a time where Goat was like the only retro format that people were playing. I was like, I saw people were exploring it, and everyone was talking about how good it was, and I was like, bro, I remember like playing throughout the years. There were a lot of phenomenal formats, right? So like, it can't just be Goat. Is kind of how I was thinking about it, and so I went back and started playing. Like, I started replaying every format, and when I got to Tengu, I like was kind of looking at it, and basically anytime I wanted to build any generic deck, anything stupid I wanted to try, I would build it in that format because I just thought it was so balanced and so like diverse. Like I felt like you could do so many cool things with each deck, and I love that. So I honestly just kind of thought it was peak Yu-Gi-Oh, and it wasn't until I saw that Edison was actually taking off that I was like, man, I don't think people know about Tengu. So that's when I was like, I think I have to be the one to tell people about Tengu. And that's why I started making content to begin with.
What I love about Tengu is like that was the first format where I actually got my first regional top.
Mm-hmm.
And I lost in top 8 because I forgot the interaction that you could change Gores to Spirit Reaper, and I discarded the Gores in my hand,
Oh no.
and the Speed Reaper was the only card he had on field, and so I could have attacked over for game. And I'll never forget that. But that's what I think that's why the whole Tengu format's so close to me.
Mhm.
It's because that was my first top. It's insane, like just the amount of decks that you can play. And me and Ty have been playing Edison for about 3 years now before it even
Yeah.
became before it became official by Konami or Time Wizard in general. But
Mhm.
um, it's just crazy that like what a year and a half can do to the card pool and do to the decks in the game. It's
Oh
insane.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, like it.
Well,
Oh, go
oh,
ahead.
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think like one of my favorite attributes of it is like every single deck type. So like between like TGs, worms, like it doesn't matter what deck it is. I feel like there are like three different ways you can build that deck and have it feel completely different in terms of playstyle, right? Like for example, like I bring up worms because I just did a video talking about a worm deck I like took to our like Tengu locals and I did pretty well with, and that was like a chaos, almost combo-y worm build, which that deck has always been seen as like a control deck, right? And the
Right.
same thing goes for like TG. We've seen like TG Chaos where there's like tour guides in it, and like people are running like Thunder King and Valors to supplement BLS Chaos Orc, and I think that's really cool that like any deck has so many different ways to build, and there's no like one single correct way to build a deck. You can do whatever you want, especially when you consider how many decks are available.
So
Gotcha.
I know that back when Vegas was announced and like Tengu Plant was announced as like one of the formats in the team,
Mm-hmm.
that's when it started picking up like a lot of popularity. Like you would get on DB, and everyone would be like wanting to play Tengu,
Yeah.
and that was like so great. Like I wasn't going to Vegas, but I'm like, man, this is like prime Tengu like testing right here,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought it was going to stick around after. I remember like the prices of cards went up, like things like Ulti Thunder King shot in price, like Mystic or Chaos Piper, not Chaos, that's the deck.
Mystic
Mystic
Piper.
Piper, yeah, it
Yeah.
shot up in price. Like I had a deck and everything, and like just the value of it like was stonks, man. And then after the 3v3 was over, it's like the popularity of the format died down.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
the market reflected that too. Like cards
yeah,
went up and then like dropped down pretty hard. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, I personally think that I don't think Tengu is in a great spot right now, not because the format is like not good enough to succeed. In fact, like I kind of was talking about this a while back ago, but it's like with Goat, like the fact that Goat format and Tengu format maintain communities while like basically being under the crushing weight of Edison is like honestly really impressive. It like speaks lengths to how good those formats actually are, in my opinion, more so than like the fact that like they're struggling. I think any format that isn't Edison right now is going to struggle, and that's because of the like it's like the mountain to the molehill. You know what I'm saying? Like it's Edison's way too big, and I genuinely mean like too big because it like puts it just makes it so it's very hard for the average player or for other players to try other formats right now. Like there's very little incentive, and that doesn't mean like people shouldn't try Changu. They absolutely should because it's phenomenal. But it is really hard right now where we're at.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people like say like they'll say like it's they'll get very upset with how much Konami will back Edison, but they're not like backing like Tengu as much as that, and it's like like I like the people I've talked to about it. I'm just like, hey, it's right now. That's just the wave that it's on right now. It's not that Tengu's like a bad format. It's just the like Edison just has a huge like popularity wave right now, and just you gotta wait for it to like hit that hit that one spot to where like, hey, now we can like now that this is kind of like died down, some we can try other things.
Yeah, well, I think Konami definitely drastically influences that, right? Like, so they did Tengu at YCS Vegas. Imagine if the next YCS, the Ultimate Time Wizard, was Tengu. Like, imagine if they did that. Where would the format be right now? It'd probably be significantly bigger than it ever has been
Yeah,
because there would be incentive for players to like, oh, Konami's still running this. Yeah, I want to
yeah.
continue, right? Like, that's why it kind of expanded so much in the first place. But then after Vegas dies, you're like, okay, well, what's the next Tengu event? Well, there isn't one. So why am I owning these Tengu cards? It makes sense that the market would drop, right?
Well,
yeah. It's
I
like
think. Sorry, Ty. Go ahead.
it's like and Justin knows about this. It's like in our area, like we had a $500 cash tournament at this shop called Big Boy Gaming, and
Mhm.
we, you know, everybody started like in our area started like gathering up like Tengu stuff and whatnot, and like it was starting like from I didn't get to go to that event, but like it seemed like everybody had like a really great time and enjoyed playing that format. And it's just
Yeah.
like right after that, it just after Vegas it just died down. Everybody just like in our area just sold off everything, so like no one really kept like even one Tengu deck, and it's like and they just we'll play online from time to time. I can't get nobody to stay in a match with me for Tengu to save my soul. I play Sabers and I play GKs, and they'll quit after game one, and then I'm like, okay.
Yeah. I mean, if you go through the Tengu Plant Discord and do like the down to duel thing, there's like a little ping. You can like ping other people who are actively looking for games, and that's like usually what most people do to like find actually quality games. Because if you go on DB and just play randos, like you're probably gonna have less of a good time. But I do agree. I feel like for any format to thrive, including Tengu, basically the players that are local to that area have to be like passionate enough about it to push it. You know what I'm saying? Like, for
Right.
example, we got local Tengu started here because me and another player here just sat down and showed up just playing me and him until eventually we started getting some GOAT players to come switch over. And basically anyone who sat down and played it, they're like, whoa, this format's insane. Like, this is cool. Because I haven't played Tengu Plants or Agents once. You know what I'm saying? I like won with Jurax, I won with Worms. You know, I'm playing like any dumb thing I can think of because I just want to show like, hey, any deck is good and it's fine. And so it's that to me is a lot of fun, seeing like people kind of light up and be like, whoa, there's a lot to this. Like there's way more to it than people actually initially think.
Right.
Which is pretty cool. But yeah, it does require people to like, you have to give lifeblood to it. I mean, it'd be great if Konami did, but who knows? I mean, no one knows what Konami's going to actually do, right? There's a lot of things that'd be great if Konami did.
I think I've heard people say, well, I don't want to get into another format because I've got to drop money on a deck. But the truth is like, let's say that Konami did make the next YCS like Tengu format, right? Is people are still going to want to play because there's a reason why they play Ultimate Time Wizard to begin with.
Exactly.
They're going to, and a lot of these people that are invested in Edison format, these are the old heads, right? Like they already have a lot of the cards. They already have the money to get these cards. And depending on what deck you play, like a lot of the decks play the same cards, right? Like you have the staples in like your warnings and things like that. You maxis, effect layers, whatever. But like a lot of the decks, like you can play Value Turbo and Tengu if you really wanted to.
Yeah, no, most Edison decks transfer over so smoothly. Yeah. Sorry, continue.
Go ahead. Was you about to say something, Justin?
I mean, like, I think that's a horrible excuse to not pick up a new format is because people are going to pick up the decks. I think that's a lie.
Yeah.
I see people all the time, like, like, they'll have, like, 6 or 7 Edison decks with them. So, like, I just think that's not a valid excuse. But I think that in order for Konami to want to make that decision, there's going to have to, like, a lot of vocal interest from the community.
Yeah. But that's also where the problem, like, kind of... It basically, like, self-creates itself. It's like, it's kind of like, you know how, like, there's, like, monopoly laws? Because, like, basically, if the one business or entity is so big, then it basically makes it impossible for competition to exist. That's kind of the position with Edison and any other retro format, right? Like, the communities of those games actively can try to force it and make it work. It's just really, really hard when, like, again, if I were, like, let's say I knew nothing about Time Wizard, I don't think it has anything to do with how good or bad a format is, if I'm being honest. I think, like, if I knew nothing about Time Wizard, retro formats, anything, I just want to start playing it because modern is not good, then I'm going to look around and be like, okay, what format should I play? And I almost guarantee you I'm going to go play Edison, right? Like, if I knew nothing, I would just go play Edison. And, like, because it makes sense. There's Konami supporting it. There's tons of events for it, tons of people playing it. Like, and so with that in mind, it makes it extremely difficult to recruit new players to any other format, like, outside of, like, exactly Edison, which is kind of, like, the big problem, which is why it's, like, it'd be on Konami to try to force that and be like, hey, this YCS, we're going to do go this way. So yes, we're going to do Tengu. And if they did that, then that would like supply way more lifeblood to all the other formats than strictly doing Edison, because it's really hard to build a community if everyone's like, well, why would I play that when there's an Ultimate Time Wizard for Edison coming up? You know what I'm saying? Like, or we're assuming there is, like, because every single one has been. The only time you'll see those, the probably resurgent, is going to be on 3v3s if they do another Go Edison Tengu, which I'd say those formats do have the biggest communities for sure, right? So it's good to supplement them, but I think they could do this for a lot of formats. There's so many good eras of Yu-Gi-Oh! We didn't play it for all these years for no reason. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of good times in Yu-Gi-Oh!
Yeah, I feel like there's there's so many different formats that can be, you can go back and it can be readdressed. Like there's some that you can do that with, and there's some that you can't. Like Dragon Ruler, like Spellbook. I think that's pretty cut and dry. But
yeah,
this stuff like, you know, a lot of people thought like back then they thought hat format was solved. And looking in today's time, there's so many different decks in Hat. There's so many different decks in Tengu. There's so many different decks in Edison. You know, there's just and that's what's fun about like exploring like all these different formats. Like right now, I'm like looking at the Fire Water format just to see what all
that format's great.
Yeah, to see what all is like available in that format. It's just that was like the initial draw for me for like looking into all the other formats for me. It's also I say this about Edison all the time. It's a run back. Like, you know, if you didn't do good the first time in any of these formats, it's a run back to try and do good this time around.
Yeah. Well, and I also think there's like a kind of like a fallacy that exists for a lot of people where I don't think Edison is like everyone's favorite format. I think people play it because they like Time Wizard generically, and so like for some it absolutely is. For others, it's just like, hey, everyone else is doing this, so I'm going to do this as well.
Right.
But the problem comes in is I think a lot of players play it under the assumption of like, hey, look, this is growing. It's so good for Time Wizard. Eventually, I'll get to play my favorite format. You know what I'm saying? It kind of comes with that delusion that can happen, and I personally don't think it'll happen unless Konami forces it.
Right, I think that would have to happen as well, and I think another reason a lot of people are jumping ship and getting into Edison like at these Ultimate Time Wizard events is like they just really don't want to play the main events for Modern.
Yeah, Modern is so bad.
And that's one thing I want to ask you. Like, what is your take on, like, because this is a big hot topic right now. What do you think? How do you feel about the prizing and stuff like these Konami events?
I have a spicy take on this. I actually thought about doing a video on this recently, because my take is that I think prizing is completely irrelevant if gameplay is good. I also don't think Konami has ever structured its game to cater to top players, right?
Right.
Like basically, I think the whole like gambler's mentality is what they want to cater to. So the average Yu-Gi-Oh player, their goal is just to top a single YCS. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So the average prize payout for their events isn't really relevant at all unless you're a player that consistently tops. But a player that consistently tops is not your average Yu-Gi-Oh player. And if those players leave, that opens up more room for other people to try to chase that dopamine hit of getting a top cut, right?
Yeah.
So like, I personally don't think that they actually need to change pricing. I think their issue lies in the fact that like gameplay is just so poor. Like their game is broken and it's bad, and they need to fix it, right? Like it's it kind of like, for example, a lot of like there's like that Jess video, right, of her quitting, and that's what is getting this topic talked about. They talk about how, yeah, prizing sucks, but then there's some other issues. Oh, the game isn't fun. The game isn't very skillful. The game is kind of bad. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's getting echoed too. So, like, people are hyper-tunneling, oh, we need bigger prizes to keep players in. And it's like, no, you need good gameplay to keep players in. Like, the prize actually doesn't matter. If I, like, for example, like, if I was Konami right now, like, this is my other hot take on how to fix the game, is I would basically do a hard reset of Yu-Gi-Oh. Like every card, like nothing is legal outside of the current sets that are out, right? So like they start with a new base set, and honestly, I would start with a GX set because like the original base sets were so broken because there were so many cards that Konami didn't really think about in the context of their game. They didn't really know what they had at the beginning, right?
Right.
Now we can clearly use the history of Yu-Gi-Oh to determine what cards were probably bad to release or what cards were like, like came out a little too early. Like for example, I think Dragon Rulers hard power crept the game to absurd levels that we did not need at that era. You know what I'm saying? Like, so like I think if they were to learn from it and be like, okay, there are so many GX sets that were terrible because they were already power crept by the original base sets, like, LOB, Magic Ruler, all those sets had like insanely powerful cards in it. All they could do is make ban lists, but I kind of think if they restructured the release of the game and just said, hey, it's still straight up Yu-Gi-Oh, we're changing how this is played out, and then they could like think of all the formats they could fix just by banning certain cards. You know what I'm saying? Like you could ban Trap Dust Shoot so much earlier in the game, and think about how many formats right now that exist would be phenomenal if it would just be like 10 times better if Trap Dust Shoot didn't exist, right? Like everyone hates that card.
Like Trap Dust Shoot just like it's literally a card that could literally end the game for your opponent before they really decide to scoop, because because you could you could literally take their best starter monster away, and then their whole hand just kind of like falls apart. And
yeah,
I think too is like when you look at formats, and I don't mean anything bad against Edison because I play it, but when you have players that can win off a Trap Dust Shoot and there's like no skill involved, I think Edison rewards bad players. I guess is what I'm getting at. Any format that has like those one cards that can just decide games outright, it doesn't matter how skilled of a player you're playing against. Like that can just outright win you a game. Whereas Tengu, like, yeah, you still got things like Trap Dust Shoot, but you also have a lot more counterplay in that format as well, right?
Yeah. Oh, there's counterplay to everything. I also kind of think, like, I'm torn on Dust Shoot in Tengu because of, yes, it is very broken, and I have absolutely lost games to it, and it does tilt me. I personally think if I could ban one card out of Tengu, it would be Mind Control, not Dust Shoot. But the thing that makes Dust Shoot kind of nice is agents are a pretty big powerhouse in the format, and they always have a big hand. They're a heavy monster count deck. So Trap Dust Shoot, whether it's in going first or second, is almost always live against agents. And I think that is a nice like balancing tool, because other decks, like if you play against back row decks, they don't really care about Dust Shoot. You know what I'm saying? If I'm playing heroes, I just set my whole hand, now Dust Shoot's dead for the rest of the game. It makes it a lot more volatile to keep in. And there's plenty of good back row decks in Tengu. So like there's a bit more balance, because like Edison, there's not a ton of good back row decks. You know what I'm saying? For the most part, they're either fairly mid-range or more like monster heavy, at least from what I've seen.
Right. What if you had to pick? I guess a top five. I about said Mount Rushmore. A top five best decks of Tengu format. What would you say? It would be the top five decks to you.
It's really tough because like how I view Tengu is like a flat line. Mm-hmm. Where every deck is really good in its own way and then also really bad in its own way.
Right.
Like, for example, like most people would commonly say, like, okay, Agents is like the best, but I don't think a deck can be the best if it has like a 30-70 matchup against Gravekeepers. Right. You know what I'm saying? Like, it makes it a lot harder then for that deck to exist. So like, I think if my top five decks are always going to be the ones that I think have the most gameplay options, in terms of like, I have a lot of versatile ways to play, and I'm not really countered by one big strategy. That's why I'm personally a fan of things like X-Sabers. I really like Falcon Punch. I think that deck is very good. Also, I had a phenomenal time playing Worms. I actually think that deck is kind of hard underrated. I don't know. It's hard to put it in top five. I mean, Agents probably deserves a spot because the deck, like, in the same light where it has like really good matchups or like really bad matchups into Gravekeepers, it also has like phenomenal matchups into other things. Like, for example, if you're playing Karakuri and you play against Agents and they're on Orange Light, it feels horrible.
Yeah.
So it's like I don't know. I guess you could put agents in there, and Tengu Plants is fairly versatile in the sense that I think it's always a generically good deck to play.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's really hard for me to place them because I really don't view it as like, oh, they're like as like a pyramid of like one deck above each other. I think
Right.
of it as like a flat line where certain decks have better matchups into other decks.
Yeah.
And because like I think for like if you were to compare it to like Edison, I think Edison it's like fairly clear that like Blackwing Volume Turbo and then like Frog Hero are like pretty high up there where like they almost definitively are always in the top cut. But the same can't be true about Tengu, where like most Tengu tournaments, the same decks you don't really see the same decks like consistently topping. It's almost like always a distinctly different top four, at least from my experience of like streaming all the tournaments that happened this year. You know what I'm saying? Like it's so hard to place like what deck is above others. It really also comes down to play style and like just like how good the player is, how good the build is. It's really tricky for me to like give a top five if I'm honest.
And I've heard the argument too that like, well, Tengu only has 2 really good decks. Like, you got to play agents, you got to play plants, and that's a complete lie. Like,
No, that's bullshit.
I think I watched one of the tier lists. I think maybe you did, and I think there was like 70 decks on there at least.
Yep.
And I'm not saying, of course, like 30 of them probably aren't really that viable, right? But like,
correct.
Still, though, even half of that is an insane amount. And you have cards like Warning, you have cards like Valor that allow those decks to play.
Mm-hmm.
Which is what's great about the format. Like, I think that's why those cards are healthy in that format.
Yeah, and oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good.
I was gonna say I kind of go back to this like example when people ask me about this. I say let's like basically the best way to look at this is draw the line. All right, what deck is not on par with these other decks, right? Like what tools are they lacking to be competitive with like plants and agents, right? Because that's where people put it, and it's like, okay, if you're thinking in the context of this deck got first place at a tournament, am I shocked, right? And so then you like start adding decks to the list. Heroes, no, Heroes easily can win a tournament in Tengu Plant format, right? Falcon Punch just won Worlds, like that's pretty conceivable, right? So like as you add more decks, like could Car Curry win? Absolutely. Would I be shocked? No, definitely not. You know what I'm saying? Like as you add more decks to the mix, it's like, okay, well, like when does it get unreasonable to say that a deck could win a tournament? And that's where I struggle to be like, oh yeah, no, this deck is clearly just the best. I think that's like a very ignorant statement that like a lot of people make. And it's like, and I think that's also a statement that hurts the format as a whole, because there's a lot of people even in the Tengu community that like kind of just echo chamber that same opinion. But like when you look at tournament results, that's just strictly not true. You know what I'm saying? Like if I look at Worlds and I see Fabled, like Tengu Plants and Agents weren't even like in top like in the top like 4, and the next closest deck was Fabled. You know what I'm saying? Like what the hell? Like how are you going to make the case that Plants and Agents are just definitively the best? If like because like for me, if it's like definitively the best, there has to be a clear cut tool or like something that the deck has that makes it just significantly better than everything else. Like for example, like with like Dragon Rulers spell books, like Dragon Rulers just had infinite resources. Other archetypes could just strictly not keep up with how much advantage that deck could get, right? And that's where you could definitively say, okay, Dragon Rulers is the best deck in this format. But that's just not true for like Tengu. Like there's no like best deck in my opinion.
Yeah, I go ahead, Justin.
No, you go ahead.
I remember, and Justin remembers this. Like when we were gearing up to start like testing like Tengu format. You know, I was on X Sabers like really heavy, and then like at the beginning of this year, like I played in a Tengu tournament online. I think it was like Tengu Rumble 13 or something like that, and I topped that event with X Sabers, and it was like everything in the top cut was just different. It was like you had X Sabers, you had Scraps, you had Cat Sith Control, you had Tengu, you had Agents, you had freaking what's called Hero, Chaos Hero. You know, just it was just a different. It was just like there was never 2 decks in the top cut of that tournament that were the same. I thought that was really cool, and it made it gave me a lot of hope playing that format.
Yeah, and I feel like that's a consistent result for the format. Like again, I stream almost every tournament or that it has existed within the past like year or two. And during that time, I don't think you rarely see decks repeat. Like you'll occasionally see some that are dominated by a certain deck, but usually you'll never see more than like 2 or 3 of a single deck represented in the top cut. 9 times out of 10, it's a completely different deck for every slot in the top cut, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, I like that's what really that spoke volumes to see like I know I can I can see that every now and again in Edison as well, but it's more you see it more, you're able to see it more so in Tengu. And the argument that people say, oh, it's just you either have to play agents or play Tengus, like no, that's not really the case.
I think so. We had that cash tournament, right? Because everybody was prepping up for the 3v3 whatever.
Yeah.
I knew that like everybody was just getting into Tengu format for the first time for the most part. So I was like, I want to play Hero Beat, but I'm going to play main deck Super Polymerization. And I blew through all of the agent matches during that tournament. Ended up getting second place and lost to the mirror match, who was also main decking Super Poly. So like that's the cool thing about like people. That's the cool thing about agents and decks like that, because that's the deck people's going to go to when they get into the format. But in that tournament, I played against Falcon Punch. I played against I think Chaos was prevalent in that tournament too. There's a lot of cool different decks in the format, and it's crazy too. Like Chaos Sorcerer at 3, BLS is back, but like the format, everything just feels so fair.
Yeah. Everything feels good. Like every deck has its own just raw strengths. Like X Sabers can't play Chaos Monsters, but I can make Nat Beast and flip Decree, and then now you don't have spell traps, and I also can negate attacks, and then that board starts getting pretty overwhelming pretty quickly. You know what I'm saying? Like it's really cool to see what every deck can do. Like for example, when Gar Curry goes off, it is the most broken deck in the format by far.
It's crazy because like not a lot of newer players don't know how to interact with that deck, right?
Yeah.
Same thing with Scraps too. Like I think that Scraps under the right pilot is a very good deck. I think if someone new to the format picks it up, I don't think they're going to grasp it. That's another fun deck too that can just come out of nowhere and do really good. And then like I've seen some cool like Evil Hero like Dark Gaia builds.
Yeah.
With the Kwaiki Mirror stuff, which is really cool too to see.
Well, and I think Tour Guide, like cards like Tour Guide and Duality, add so much like playability to so many different archetypes. Like for example, the Dark Gaia deck you were talking about, I think Photo Shooty, if you know him, he was the owner of the Tengu Plant Discord. He topped the tournament playing Evil Hero, but he ran the Cloudian Fiend monster that's a water, so he could access Absolute Zero with like Miracle Fusion and stuff like that, and like put that into the deck. And it's just like, okay, by like now, like with Tour Guide, people are starting like with Cat Sith, they're starting to run like Kushano, or like you basically can run like monsters that have different attributes to supplement your deck, so you can easily get out a card like Gen X or Creation Resignator is a wind, and I've seen like a Mist Valley deck use that, so they could summon Tour Guide, get Creation Resonator from deck, and then bounce the Creation Resonator to hand, and then go off on their Mist Valley combo, and then like you could, once they could get into a level 8 synchro, they could special summon the Creation Resonator for like the sick combo. It's like, it's crazy how hard certain cards like Duality and Tour Guide can like supplement how good a deck can become, and it really changes the game of like because, and I think that's part of the problem with the format, like the view of the format is initially back in the day, people didn't have money for Tour Guides, man. Like it was an expensive card. It was like almost $200 a piece, you know, and so like most people, if they had Tour Guides, they were just playing Tengu Plants, and I think that's why Tengu Plants was seen as like such a dominant force in the format. Which like nowadays I don't think it really is seen in that as like hard in that light. Like for example, when I played at Tengu Locals and I was playing Jurak, I played against my buddy playing Tengu Plants, and I just completely demolished him with Jurak, and he goes, "I'm done playing this trash deck," and he just lost to Jurak. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like I just made someone quit playing Tengu Plants because they lost to Jurak. Like that, like to me that just shows like anything is possible. But then you also add in the fact that like, okay, now people who are just interested in exploring what different decks are capable of, you can now throw Tour Guide into anything because it's cheap or you're playing online, you know? So like there's so many different decks that have infinitely new strategies that no one ever thought about, because like at the time, tour guide was in plants or maybe agents, right? Like that's how it
Yeah.
went back then.
Yeah, I remember back during those days, like I couldn't afford tour guides. I would it would jade me so bad because I literally had everything else but tour
Yeah.
guide to play to play Tengu Plant. But I was just like, you know what? Screw it.
Dude,
I played like a zombie. I played like a zombie plant deck for a while, and then like I played TGs, and I played back then. Heroes would work for me. Now I can't get heroes to save my soul. I can't. I cannot win. I cannot
dude,
win a single. I cannot win a single game with heroes. I could open the godliest hero. I could pick my six, and it doesn't matter. I'm just gonna. I get wrecked using heroes every time. It jades me so bad.
funny story about tour guide, and it's really not funny because it's messed up. But you remember Madison?
Yeah.
Matt, so he back when tour guide first came out, it was like I think at that time it was like $180, and he listed a playset of tour guides for $500, but put in the description or 3 random hollow cards from Hidden Arsenal.
Oh
And
God.
somebody bought the playset, and he sent them 3 random hollows from Hidden Arsenal. And dude, I was like, Madison, man.
Ooh,
Oh my God.
that's a brutal one. I remember with like historically, it's actually crazy because like I mentioned I had like a really good run at YCS Kansas City, and the reason why, like I played TG agents at YCS Kansas City, and it was because like I fully funded like. My parents never like wanted to buy me a single Yu-Gi-Oh card. They did not want me to play the game at all. I had to do everything on my own. So like when I went to the tournament, YCS Kansas City was right when Dino Rabbit got released, and I was looking at that deck and I was like, "This is way too broken for Tour Guide to be sitting at 3 going forward. Like this is way too good." And so I was like, "I need to sell this card now before it drops and gets hit by the ban list because the ban list was coming up." So I went to the event and just hard sold all 3 copies. And then I was like, well, I have to play something in this agent list. So I just played TG agents, and it felt really, really good. Like I had a great time doing it. But it's just crazy. Then I got unlucky because immediately after that, they didn't actually hit Tour Guide on the ban list, and they kept it, and Dino Rabbit was like full power and just the most disgusting deck in the game for a really long time. But, like I still couldn't risk holding onto the card because it was so expensive. And that's kind of sad because it was a really good card.
Yeah, Dino Rabbit was a very insane deck. During that time period, I had picked up like when we got the Dark World structure deck like around like October of that year, and I like at first like at first for like a little bit I clowned the deck a bit, and then like. Then like after I I picked it up because nothing else working for me. I was just like, we'll give it a shot and see how it goes. And then like I took it to locals and just started decimating everybody. Got to the point no one wanted to even play against me. And then I was just like, when I started hearing about people getting back into Tengu format now, it's just I was like, oh, I'm gonna go back and play Dark World, and it's like, oh no, you can't play Dark World for Tengu format. I'm just like, damn it.
I personally was on Team Dark World. I actually think, like, I was a fan of Columbus over Toronto because I thought that Dark World was kind of fun to play against. I thought it was challenging. Like, it's like a tough deck to beat.
Yeah.
And I think it's bricky in its own right as well, right? Like, it has just as many problems as it has benefits going for it. And I think it's a phenomenal counter to turn 1 Royal Tribute. Like, it's a blowout. If you Royal Tribute Dark World game 1, you literally will lose the game. And I think that's like it's pretty fair. I think that's fine. And so I was like, I was personally comfortable with it. I understand that like why it's not. It's like kind of like I don't really care too much either way. But back in the day, in the early eras of Tengu, I was definitely Team Dark World. I thought it should be in the format. I always remembered it in there.
If I got to give somebody Dark World to play, as long as I get Great Tornado, I'm okay with that. It's funny too because like back when I started getting back into Tengu again, I started watching your channel actually, and I saw the thickest Fusion Gate deck with Electrum.
Oh
Dude, I was like, I'm building this shit. So, like I went out and got the stuff, and I remember playing against one of our friends It was actually before the cast tournament, and he's playing Gravekeeper, and I just keep dropping Fusion Gate, man, and like cycling, get on my board of 5. He's like Dark Hole. I'm like, all right, but like, dude, that deck is so much fun, man.
Yeah, it's
Definitely.
cool.
It's a glass billing, but it's so much fun.
Yeah, I love that deck. I've been really tempted to bust it out for my Tengu locals. I'm gonna play that deck soon, I think, because it is so much fun, and that combo is so satisfying to resolve. The only thing that scares me, because like I really want to play Infernity, because I love playing Infernity, but like since there's so many people getting into the format locally for me, I'm actually scared to bust out decks that have like OP combos, because it's like they're very interruptible. It's not that big of a deal. But if you're inexperienced in the format and you just watch me Infernity combo on you, you're gonna be like, this format sucks. Like you're gonna just think it's bad because you don't know how to play against it. So I'm just like, you know what? We'll give it some more time before I bust out like the Gate Heroes or the Infernity, because like the combos are sick, but like people are gonna get salty about them. So like I can't really do it.
That's another deck I wanted to try and like play in Edison was not Edison. Tengu format was Infernity. My friend Austin had picked up the deck, and he like we were play testing because I believe he played in that $500 tournament, didn't he, Justin?
Yeah, he played Agents.
Oh, he played Agents. Oh, well, he was at the time he was testing Infernity, and he just like watching the deck go off, and it's like, I don't like. We were playing on DB. I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to break this. We're going to try, but I mean, this looks pretty sick.
Yeah, if Infernity resolves, it's like GG. The issue with Infernity is like it gets hard walled by Thunder King. If you put a Thunder King on the board, the deck can't combo. It has to out Thunder King before it can combo. And
Yeah.
like if you're smart in playing against Infernity and you have Thunder King, you also elect not to attack because they probably have D-Prison and that's their out. So if you just don't attack and just sit on a Thunder King, then you can just play with anything else, but just let that Thunder King sit there, and they just can't play the game. It is impossible for Infernity to deal with it. That's the secret sauce, but so it's like fairly a reasonable deck where it's like, if it goes off, it's going to be the most broken thing you'll ever see. If it doesn't go off, it feels absolutely miserable to play, but people are only going to view it from the lens of, I saw this go off, it's broken, this bad format. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's how they're going to see it.
Yeah, definitely. Like it's like breaking somebody. It's like breaking somebody into Edison and like hitting them with like black wing, like hitting them with like black wings, because it's just like it's playing against black wings and watching them open double whirlwind shore. It lets all the wind out of your sail. It just feels so it feels so defeating.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, people don't actually know. I have like played at Edison. I've played in Edison tournaments before. Like people think I just like arbitrarily hate on the format, but like I've played in it. I played the format. I did well in the tournaments I played in too. I just like, I don't know. I can't look past like I feel like there's so many blowout cards. I also hate Collude at 3 and like Honest at 2. I hate damage step cards like that where you just like, you have no option to deal with it. Like if Edison had like debunk or something like that, I could maybe like you could maybe justify it. But for me, like some of those cards are just like so cringe to play against, and it feels really fucking miserable. At least in my experience.
I remember I had a friend, Courtney Waller. He actually won YCS Kansas City with Chaos Control.
Yeah, I've played that deck before. His build.
I remember, like, it was YCS Charlotte. I think it was 2012. Like whenever Sheldon Kubert won, and he was a big Blackwing guy. Like beforehand, he had topped like the Nationals 2010 with it and everything. And he's all like every regional I would see him. He was always playing Blackwings. And it didn't matter what happened to the deck, he would consistently keep playing. And like we're playing against each other at YCS Charlotte. And I was on Tigerless Glare Beast, and he was on a weird Bayou Turbo deck, and he still had the one Colute in there, and had the one Icarus attack. I'm just like, Courtney, I know you love the deck, man, but you gotta give it up.
Yeah, well, I think for me, a really good indication of like why I think Blackwings are like pretty overpowered, especially in Edison, is like if you ever watch like Sivo's series where he's like progression series,
Mm-hmm.
the season one of progression series, he had like full power Blackwings, and they had that's what made them make rules to ban cards and like change things because that he basically dominated with that deck all the way up to like dragon rulers. You know what I'm saying? And I think even then it was strong. You know what I'm saying? Like it was
Yeah.
crazy how strong full power Blackwing actually is. And so it's just like, well, yeah, that deck's pretty insane. You know, like I don't know. I think I have said it before, but I kind of think diversity in Edison is a little fake. It's a little fake. There's a few decks that kind of pop up here and there,
So
but
I
you see a lot of the same stuff.
yeah, I think that like so where that came from, like right. So when you look back at formats, like back in the day, like formats like in modern Yu-Gi-Oh last a lot longer than they did back then, right? Just because the ban list, there's so much time between the ban list. So like back in the actual like Edison format, which was like a month, 2 months maybe, I can't remember exactly. You didn't have all that time to find out which decks worked. Same thing with
Yeah.
tank format. Okay, so now that Edison became popular, the first year people are discovering new decks. So in their mind, oh my God, there's so many decks to choose from. But once you play
Yeah.
this format for 2 years, you realize you maybe got 5 decks that are competitive.
Yeah.
And right now people have in their minds, okay, well, Tengu has 2 or 3 good decks because that's what was good back then. They haven't taken the time to sit down for that year or 2 years like they did with Edison and find those 20, 30 other decks.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
that's fair.
that's part of the problem too. I totally agree because like especially because there's so many people just printing the narrative of like, oh, it's just plants and agents, everything else is like okay, but then it's just like again, I just don't understand the justification for something like that when you see tournament results. Like again, Falcon Punch won Worlds. Like that deck didn't even exist in historical Tengu. Catsif has won a ton of events, and that deck didn't exist in historical Tengu. You know what I'm saying? So it's like,
Yeah.
well, if these decks are just so dominant, why are these other decks performing so well in all these events? You know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't make sense.
Right. Like it really doesn't like I remember I played like that cats. I think cats is if I could get the word out, Catsith control. I think that was if I had to pick the top five, probably in my top five. And I was watching the Tengu Worlds, and watching how the Falcon Punch deck was going off. I'm like, this deck is it looks like when you see the cards being laid down, it looks so strange.
Yeah.
But when you see it, all the pieces just interacting with one another, it's just like it'll leave you stumped. It's like this actually just pieced this together and did what?
Yeah, honestly, when you look at if you were to like look at the overview of Falcon Punch, like a dueling book screenshot of the deck, and you had never seen it before, you'd be like, this deck is absolute garbage. Like you would just assume it sucks. Like it looks so janky, it looks so stupid. But then when you see what it's capable of, you're like, oh my god, this deck is insane. You know, it's like it's a crazy design deck. It's so like I've had so much fun playing that deck. Like it's one of the most satisfying decks. I think I would rank it in like probably my top five, at least in terms of like most fun decks to play in the format. I love that deck because it's like a control deck that somehow does some of the most disgusting combos and card advantage you've like ever seen in Yu-Gi-Oh. It's so crazy.
I agree. Like watching it was just absolutely, it was just mind boggling. So
Yeah, I think didn't our friend Cole take that to the Tengu tournament?
I believe he did. I know he was on that. I know he was on that deck for a while. I believe he played it in that same tournament that I played. I played in at the top of the year. I know. I know he did. I know he did then. I don't remember if he played it at that $500 tournament or not. But you played Hero, didn't you?
Yeah, I played Hero.
Yeah, I tried my best to get X Saber together for that, and it just wasn't in the cards. No pun intended. Um, but Tyler, if there was a Ultimate Time Wizard tournament this weekend at YCS, what are what are your top three cards you would like to see as giant cards?
For like Tengu?
Yeah, if there was a Tengu Ultimate Time Wizard tomorrow.
Ooh.
What was your top 3 cards you would like to see as a giant card?
I personally would want X-Saber Dark Soul.
Oh, that would be sick.
Or even like Full Helm Knight, something like that. I'm a big X-Saber fan. I love the artwork of those cards. I also think, I mean, like, I'm just gonna be biased because I'm gonna look at like every I think Infernity Archfiend would be a sick giant card. A Curry like Beret or something like that would be a sick giant card. Serene Psychic Witch is one of my favorite cards in the format. Yeah, there's a lot of. I don't know. I think it'd be somewhere around those. Like some of those cards there, I think would like. I just like cards with like cool artwork, and I think a lot of those cards have really sick artwork for the format. If it was like to be like on par with the format, like I think for most people it'd probably be like a Thunder King would be like a pretty big one because that's pretty relevant in the format. Or like even Hyperion would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean, Tour Guide's already been done, but Tour Guide is kind of like a no-brainer.
Or Tengu itself.
Yeah,
True.
Or Hyper Librarian.
Yeah, I think Tengu's just an ugly card.
Yeah, he's an ugly-looking guy.
It really is. I remember for a little bit I had I tried to make it real, but it just then my testing just wasn't working. I was playing a Fabled plant deck playing Tengus, and it just the hands just were not meshing at all. I was just like, okay, we'll come back and readdress this at a later date.
Bro, I love Fabled, and honestly, a lot of those cards would be such cool giant cards, like Fabled Unicorn or something, because I think the artwork of the Fabled monsters are just incredible. Like, I think they're so cool looking.
They are. Bro, I wish.
But yeah, it's a tough egg to crack.
I wish Quasar was legal for Tengu.
True.
Dude, I remember, Justin, you might remember this conversation, like when because Justin was trying to get me into Tengu like hardcore, and I was like, okay, I was going. I found I found like an old deck list of mine for Fableds, and it was but like the thing about it was I didn't know, I didn't remember what format it was from, and like it had Shooting Quasar in the extra deck. I was like, okay, we're gonna play this, and
he's like, what do you think of this deck list?
I was like, what do you think of this deck list? He's like, you can't play that. I was like, why? He's like, Quasar's not legal. I'm like, fuck.
Yeah,
I think that's the moment his hopes for Tengu crashed.
I was like, damn. I was like, I'm about to go through here and just start bodying people with Quasar. Nah, not at all.
I think my in actually YCS Miami format, I topped a regional playing Quick Draw or Junk Doppel.
Yeah.
Because Quasar was legal, and I could every time I was about to make the card, my opponent would just scoop because they just couldn't out that Quasar. But it was like, I don't know. It was such a cool deck at the time because in Miami format they have like the wind up OTK, so not the hand loop, but the OTK. And what I learned about it was most of them would overextend the board and just make a bunch of exceeds, none of which had any type of defense or negation. It was just to do damage in OTK. So I played Junk Doppel with Battle Fader, and so I would just let them build their board and attack in, and I just Battle Fader and then Black Rose them on the following turn. And it was like I can't tell you how many people I just blew out doing exactly that because they thought they could win because my board was just empty, and I just sat there and watched them combo and then win. It was so funny. But yeah, Quasar is such a cool card. It was such a fun card to play with.
It was. It's probably top 5 one of my favorite synchros in the game. I guess all right. I guess we're getting ready to hit that hour mark, so I guess we'll start to wind down. Tyler, is there any shout outs or anything that you want to give before we sign off or anything? Any last minute thoughts you want to say?
Interesting. In terms, I guess I'll give a shout out to Dazu the Devastator. He's another YouTuber. He's the guy who's helping me do Tengu locals here, which is pretty cool. He was the one who he literally picks me up from the train station because I take like an hour train down to go play Tengu
Right.
like every other week, and I'll sit down with him and like I said, it was just me and him playing Tengu against one another until we started building and getting some more people. So like shout out to having somebody here that is down to like commit like that, because like obviously I'm a psychopath and I'll do it, but like getting someone else to do it, it's pretty cool. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So that's a good shout out. But yeah, I just hit 2K subscribers this week, so that's pretty hype too. So shout out to those people supporting the channel. And I guess my last pitch is if you don't play Tengu, try the format, give it a go. It's definitely the best format in Yu-Gi-Oh's history, in my opinion. It's peak Yu-Gi-Oh! You should give it a shot and make your own judgments on it. Yeah, that'll be my final shout out. The format's incredible. Play the format.
Definitely give it a shot if you've not before. Just anything you want to say?
No, except there was like a dad joke I was going to tell you earlier when you were stuttering. I was like, "Does the cat fifth have your tongue?"
Oh
but
my
like,
God.
I think we're well past that point now. So.
Well,
no, that's all I got.
Well, all right, Tyler. I appreciate you sitting down with us and being on the show. We really enjoyed having you. And if you ever want to come back, just give us a holler. We'll definitely do this again.
Anytime, I don't mind sitting here talking about random Yu-Gi-Oh stuff,
Well, this is Ty, Justin, and Tyler with TCG Rewind from the Behind the Duel Disc podcast. Sign off until the next one. Y'all have a good night.